Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Right, ATP Vienna Open draw preview and prediction video. It is absolutely stacked. There are so many incredible players in this tournament, and it's more like a Masters 1000 tournament, in all honesty, given how strong it is. And we're going to get into some of the incredible first round matches, which are just mind blowing, in all honesty, that they're going to be happening in the first round. Before we get into it, though, remember to that like button, do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Daniel Medvedev is a reigning champion. He is the man coming into it who is not only the reigning champion, but the number one seed. So he's definitely the favorite on paper, but there's some massive players, Yannick Sinner, to name one player, who will be looking to win the title here as well. And there's some fantastic players in form as well. So one of the biggest popcorn matches of the first round is Daniel Medvedev versus Arthur Fields. Now, as always, we're going to go through each and every match, and then ultimately, I'll give you guys my winner for the tournament. Arthur Fields has just made a final today, lost to Alexander Bublik in straight sets, but it was a pretty tight one, and he beat Stefanos Tsitsipas on his way to the final of the European Open. So this is a tough match for Medvedev, and a lot might come down to how Arthur Fields is feeling physically and mentally as well after a disappointing loss, because he would have wanted to win that and add to his Lyon title. But at 19 years of age, he's a very exciting young player. I do think Medvedev's experience and just the fact that he's going to be a little bit fresher will hold him in good stead. I do think he'll be able to frustrate Fields, and I'd be surprised if Medvedev loses. He might get tested by the young Frenchman, but I do think the Russian will come out on top. And then we've got another, I mean, so many of these are ridiculous, ridiculously good matchups. Grigor Dimitrov versus Lorenzo Musetti, two incredibly good one-handers. You know, you might not say that Dimitrov has an incredible one-hander, but as a player, he's been in great form recently. Musetti does have a great one-hander, but it's an interesting matchup because there are some similarities, but also some real differences. Musetti's forehand, definitely not as potent as Dimitrov's, which is, you know, an incredible weapon at times. And he has a recent victory over Carlos Alcaraz, which has put him in really good stead and given him a lot of confidence as well. As of late, he's had a very, very good season this year. For Lorenzo Musetti, it's been a bit of an up and down season, as you would normally expect from him. He is a little bit surface dependent, and I'm intrigued to see how this kind of plays out, this matchup, because you have to remember that this Vienna Open is really intriguing. It comes across as a tournament which I think is going to be really, really exciting. The indoor swing has started, and you can see there's certain players who are much better indoors than others. Medvedev is an incredible indoor player. I think Dimitrov plays better in indoor conditions than Musetti, and that's why I'm going to pick Dimitrov, also due to his really good form. And yeah, I think his form has been very, very good. So I'm going to go for Grigor Dimitrov. JJ Wolf versus Yuri Lehechka. I mean, this is a tough one because Lehechka hasn't been in the best of form. And for JJ Wolf, he's been up and down as well. Lost in the first round this week. And he hasn't been as consistent as I would have liked. Whereas for Yuri Lehechka, he also hasn't been great. In all honesty, he hasn't put together a great run of results recently. In indoor tennis, you know, who's going to be better? Lehechka's got a pretty big serve. JJ Wolf has some big weapons, though, and I do think indoor conditions could suit him. It's a real 50-50 for me. I think it could go either way. I'm going to go with Lehechka to come out on top. Khachanov and Safiullin. Now, Khachanov hasn't been in great form since coming back from injury. He's been a little bit inconsistent, hasn't found the height that we have expected from him really in the last year and a half, especially in slams. He's been a real consistent performer. Safin has had some good results. So this could be a tough match in an all Russian matchup. I'm going to go with the seed Hachinov, but again, this one could go either way. I do think indoor conditions, if he serves well, it's going to be difficult to break him and difficult to for Safin to get the victory or the W here. Then another incredible matchup in Tsitsipas versus Team. We've seen Team have some really close calls against Tsitsipas. Potentially, you could argue should have won a match or two against Tsitsipas recently. And look, Team, I said this on the live Q&A I did. Dominic Team is missing a real marquee victory since his comeback from injury. And he's been close in a few instances, but he hasn't quite got over the line. There've been some really gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching losses, really, really tight losses, which, would have hurt. They definitely would have hurt. So for me, this is a really big matchup because Tsitsipas hasn't been playing incredibly well. He did play okay against Arthur Fields, but we know in the last 6 to 9 months, he hasn't been great. This is a version of Tsitsipas that Dominic Thiem can beat. Even the Dominic Thiem that we're seeing right now, Dominic Thiem needs to do a few things, and I'll probably look to do a preview on this matchup if possible. So I won't go into it huge depth, but I think this is his best chance of beating him to date. So I'm going to go for Dominic Thiem to get the win and cause an upset. Then I've got Matchak as a qualifier versus Vukic. I'll go for the qualifier in Matchak. Goho versus Karatsev. Karatsev made a final this week as well in Tokyo. Lost to Ben Shelton in the final, but he's in good form. Goho's a really difficult opponent. He's very powerful, a bit tricky, but I think Karatsev should carry his form through at least in this match. Then we've got Alexander Muller, the qualifier, versus Tommy Paul. I think Tommy Paul should get it done. I think he's very dangerous indoors. I think he'll enjoy the conditions. Similarly, I think Zverev indoors is going to be too strong for Offner. His serve is going to be lethal in these conditions. Cam Norrie against the qualifier Misalic. I'm going to go for Norrie. And Arnaldi to come through the qualifier Ramos Vinolas. Then you got Andre Rublev versus Alexei Popyrin. Now, Popyrin is also a big server. He's a big hitter. He could cause Rublev issues. Rublev's been playing some good tennis, though, in all honesty. So, he made the final of the Shanghai Masters, which was a really good run and a very, very tight match against Hurkacz in the final where he lost, by the skin of his teeth. I'm going to go for Andre Rublev to come through this. Francis Tiafoe and Dan Evans. This is a really good chance for Dan Evans to get one up on Tiafoe. Tiafoe's okay indoors, but I wouldn't say, his game is lifted at all indoors. Whereas I maybe think Dan Evans, I kind of fancy him on indoor hard courts because of his style. I'm going to go for a bit of an upset and go for Dan Evans to get the win over Francis Tiafoe. Gael Monfils has also been playing really well. I'm going for him. I'm going for him to beat Altmaier. And then McDonald versus Cerundolo. Cerundolo should be a little bit too solid, but McDonald, he tends to be one of those players, similar to Kai Kanepi on the WTA side, where he can cause upsets. He really can against players who you probably wouldn't expect him to lose to. But I'll go for Cerundolo. And then the pick of the first round matches, in my opinion, Yannick Sinner versus Ben Shelton. Ben Shelton has beaten him in the last, month or so because he beat him in the Shanghai Masters. And Yannick Sinner has also won a title recently, beating Medvedev in the finals. So both players in really good form. But Shelton has won a match against the Italian recently. He's also just won his first ATP 500 title, beating Aslan Karatsev in Tokyo. This is a flip of a coin, in all honesty. In the past, if you'd asked me, I would have said Yannick Sinner. And if we're talking about indoor conditions, Shelton's serve is going to be a nightmare indoors, honestly, and his big hitting. So this could be a real tough match for Yannick Sinner, who also has big booming ground strokes, but the serve isn't quite, near where Ben Shelton's serve is in terms of level. But he does move well indoors as well. I think he likes the conditions. He's got the type of game that is kind of transferable on all surfaces. I do think Shelton's game will be amplified a little bit on this, so it's going to be a tough match for Sinner. I'm going to go for Sinner, but Shelton could easily win this. In all honesty, it's a real tough one for Yannick Sinner. Okay, second round matches. So Medvedev versus Dimitrov. I mean, that is a real tough match for Medvedev. Medvedev should, though, be able to maneuver himself past Dimitrov. I just think Dimitrov, despite how well he's been playing, the style of Medvedev is so difficult for a player like Dimitrov. I just think his backboard ability, also serving indoors, is really tough. And the way that he returns, I think he's going to get the W. I'm going to go for Hachinov to beat Lehechka, Team to beat Matchak. I'm going to go for Tommy Paul to beat Karatsev, Zverev to beat Nori, Rublev to beat Arnaldi, Monfils to beat Evans, and Sinner to beat Cerundolo. So that leaves me with a Medvedev Hachinov quarterfinal. Medvedev for me. I think Tommy Paul will come through Dominic Thiem. I don't think Thiem's levels. If Tommy Paul makes it this far, I don't see Thiem being able to match Tommy Paul. I just think Tommy Paul's style is probably wrong for Thiem. Then Zverev Rublev. This is a really good matchup. I mean, I really hope we get this, especially indoors. It'll be a really exciting match. Rublev's been playing really well. Zverev, though, indoors with that service just is really hard to think that he's not going to win. I'll go for Sinner Monfils first. I think Sinner's going to beat Monfils. Rublev, Zverev. You know what? I'm gonna go for even though Rublev is the highest seed, I think this would be an upset. I'm gonna go for Rublev to beat Zverev. Which, yeah, in my eyes, is a bit of an upset because I think Zverev is a better indoor player. Okay, then we've got Daniel Medvedev and Tommy Paul in the semifinals and Rublev Sinner. So I'm going to go a bit left field here. I'm going to go Rublev to beat Sinner. I'm quite high on Rublev recently. I've been quite impressed with the changes he's made in his game, and I've seen improvements in that Shanghai run. You can see the improvements that he's been making in his game, and that to me is a real positive sign. And I think it's probably about time that he makes a real run in an indoor tournament. So I'm going to go for Rublev and then Medvedev to beat Paul. I think, again, a little bit tricky for Tommy Paul. He does have the game. I've said it in the past, and I've had egg on my face saying that Tommy Paul would beat Medvedev on a hard court, and I do think he has the ability to do so. I think he's got the style to trouble Medvedev, but I think Danielle has just shown that he's maybe a level too much for Tommy Paul. And if he's made it this far, it means he's playing good level. So I've got an all-Russian final of Medvedev and Rublev. And I'm going to go big. And I'm going to go for Rublev to cause the upset against Medvedev. He's barely ever beaten Medvedev, but the level that Rublev's playing, if he can show that type of level that he showed against Hurkacz, against Medvedev, I think he's got a good chance of winning. I think Medvedev has to play a really high level then. And yeah, I fancy Rublev. I really do. So I'm going to go for Rublev to win. And if he wins this, it will be a great victory because it's absolutely stacked lineup, as I said. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What matches are you most looking forward to in round one? And also, who's your pick to win the title? And what do you agree with? What do you disagree with in terms of my picks as well? Thanks very much, guys. Stay safe and well, and we'll see you on the next.